Sony Santa Monica have been working on a new game with Cory Barlog for about 7 years now. It's going on to 8 years, and we really haven't heard anything about it since Cory Barlog really worked on the new soft reboot of God of War, which is in the Norse mythology, which is critically acclaimed and is pretty much ended as we know so far. They didn't want to make it a trilogy, so they made basically 3 games in 2 games and ended that Norse mythology saga. And Cory Barlog did not work on the second game, which was God of War Ragnarök. He only worked on the first one and wrote the second one. The second one was directed by somebody else, and the baton was kind of passed on to that director because it has been known for years now that Cory has been wanting to work on his own game for the longest time now. In fact, one of the reasons why he left the project from God of War 2 is because of the fact that Sony didn't want him to work on his own game. And keep in mind, I can understand if these games come out every 2 years. These games take 5 to 6 years at minimum. And if you're building your own engine from the top up, it's probably going to take you around 8 years for this game to come out. So it's only sensible that Cory wanted to make his own game. And it only makes sense that PlayStation and Sony were like, give him his own game. He rebooted this series and he made it critically acclaimed to the point where God of War sold 35 million copies, which is more than any of the original Greek pantheon sold in total. So it only makes sense for him to make his own game. Not only that, but God of War got the award of Game of the Year at the Game Awards show. So it's it only makes sense, give this guy his own game. So we've only heard snippets of what this game could be. One of them being is that this was a brand new game, a new intellectual property. By the way, guys, make a little note, whenever I say new IP or intellectual property, that means a brand new game that PlayStation doesn't have. For example, God of War is a game that is established. It is an intellectual property that PlayStation and that Sony owns. So whenever I say that, that is an established franchise that PlayStation and Sony have and own. So just to clear that up from now on when I say intellectual property. And the other speculation that we've had is the game is a space sci-fi game. And apparently everything that we know about this game is basically untrue. Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, which is probably the most respected journalist in the game right now, the guy who you go to, he's kind of like the whoosh of gaming journalism. If he says so, that is probably as good as gold of a word that you're gonna get. And this is his quote on the new game. I'll put it this way. It's not a new IP, but it might feel like one. Maybe that's why people are confused. Please don't ask any more questions about this. If I wind up reporting any more information at any point in the future, it'll be an article, not on a forum. And that sci-fi stuff that people apparently believe for years is nonsense. So this is where we can get into speculation mode. What could this game be? The one thing that my head went to right away is the fact that Sony Santa Monica was working on a sci-fi epic for the longest time with the Battlestar Galactica writer, and it kind of fell out. We really didn't get to the point where the game was fleshed out all the way. It was more to the point where they made a demo that was essentially $200 million in order to put into the executives and to show them what they wanted to do. And PlayStation and Sony shut it down because it was just costing too much money. Let's be real. If a game costs you $200 million to make and you don't have anything to show for it besides a tech demo, that's really not a good sign, and that's really not a good way to spend money, especially with the fact that it's a brand new intellectual property that you're taking a risk on and you don't know that if that game is going to do good or not. My thoughts is that Cory was teasing early on in Twitter that he was making a sci-fi game with different things that he was posting, but it was speculated that he was going to revive that game because it really wasn't to the point where PlayStation and Sony Santa Monica were like, okay, we're not going to make this game anymore, we're going to scrap it. From what internal reports say, they kind of scrapped it to the point where they would come back to it later because there was a lot of story already written down and a lot of the foundation kind of set. So At first, I was like, oh yeah, maybe Cory's going back to do that. And technically, it's not a new intellectual property. It's something that's established already that PlayStation owns. But with Jason Schreier saying that it's not a sci-fi or in space, it kind of makes you scratch that out. So let's scratch that one out as speculation that it's not that. Another one can be that there was internal reports that PlayStation was making a Metroidvania style game of God of War that was kind of like Symphony of the Night of Castlevania, to where like it's a side scroller but it's very much in depth where you go back. Metroidvania essentially means that you go back to different parts of the game and like you unlock certain parts, like in the first God of War and in the second God of War Ragnarok, where like certain parts of the game get unlocked when you get new tools. Imagine that, but side-scrolling and Symphony of the Night Castlevania style game. That's one of the games that people are speculating that this game could be, and it's based in the Greek mythology side-scroller Castlevania type game. Another speculation is that it's a God of War remake, which would be really nice, but like I said before, Cory has been wanting to make a new game altogether. While I do think the Metroidvania God of War game is being worked on, there also is multiple projects being worked on right now at Sony Santa Monica. So while I do think that is a real project and a real report of a game that's coming out, I don't think that it's a reboot God of War. I do think that Cory wants to do his own thing, so we can X that one out and make it as a probable, because that Metroidvania game is very much real. So much so that we thought that it was going to be announced at the Summer Game Fest, but apparently not. We'll probably see it at the Game Awards, so we'll see more of that later on this year. Now, this is where the fun part comes in my opinion, in the speculation. It is not a licensed game, and it is an intellectual property that PlayStation owns. So it could be a plethora of games, and they did say that it will feel like a new intellectual property because of the fact that it's basically a reimagining from what they're saying, like from what they're kind of implying. It's a reimagining of an intellectual property that we've already seen in the past. And this would make sense considering the fact that the CEO of PlayStation and Sony were saying that pretty much we have a bunch of intellectual properties that we can essentially use and haven't been using for the longest time. There's so many games that PlayStation can revisit and reimagine and remake in their own way if they really want to. For example, it could be a Legend of Dragoon game. It could honestly be a PlayStation All-Stars game. It could be a plethora of intellectual properties that PlayStation has been needing to leverage for the longest time now. And keep in mind, Cory and Santa Monica Games are a extremely talented studio that can pretty much do anything that they want. At this point, Cory could make a Tetris game and I would be there day one. He has a proven track record that almost everything that he touches is really good. From being involved from the Rise of the Tomb Raider, or the Tomb Raider game that is a reboot for today's modern audience, from God of War 2, God of War Ghost of Sparta, which he wrote, God of War Chains of Olympus, which he also wrote as well, and of course the new God of War Pantheon with the Norse mythology that we know of today, and God of War Ragnarok that he didn't direct and wrote. My best guess of what this game could be is honestly going to be a intellectual property that PlayStation has already that needs to be leveraged to modern audiences. It is not a licensed game. It's not something that is from another company. This is a game that PlayStation owns and has owned for a bit now. Selfishly, I hope that we get some information on this game very soon, because we haven't heard anything, not a peep from this game from the last 7 years. We've only heard snippets and we've only heard journalism as of now from Jason Schreier of what this game could be. I want to hear what you guys have to say about this, because It really makes me excited to speculate about these kinds of things as a big gaming nerd and as a big nerd in general. These things make me super excited. Let me know what you think in the comment section, what you think this is. Do you think this is a brand new game? Do you think that this is an intellectual property that PlayStation already owns? If so, which game is that? And let me know what you think in the comment section. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe if you made it all the way through. Make sure you put Barlog in the comment section if you can, which is Barlog. Let me know what you think below, and remember, you're pretty good.